Oh, you thought it would never happen. Oh. And already a hand is up. 2 hands are, oh my gosh. You guys, don't make me cry. Don't make me cry. 2 hands are up. Yeah, so I got in. It was like 4 in the morning. Welcome aboard, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. Certainly, we are all interested in the Vice President, his remarks. Today's going to be slightly different. It already is a little bit. I was on the Secretary's travel, of course. Many of you were as well. Raise your hands if you were on that lovely travel experience through the forests of the world. 1. Yeah, all right. Got home about 4 in the morning. And so don't take advantage of me. I've had a few hours sleep. But yes, so it's been an unusual day, and I wanted to do this because, gosh, nothing's happened, so I thought we'd just have simple chats today. But it's different in that there are several large issues, which I believe all of you would be interested in, mostly, that are significant, and so we're going to move in that regard. I've got a bit of an announcement for you as well, but several things, of course, are on our plate. So it is an experiment. Thank you for working with me, and I appreciate you being here, obviously, to say the least. All right, so we did just return from a highly successful trip in the Caribbean. This was Secretary Rubio's second trip in our hemisphere. From day one of this administration, American leadership has been back in our region. We are standing with our partners to ensure mutual prosperity, security, and progress. In addition, the United States sends our deepest condolences to all affected in Burma and Thailand by the earthquake that struck this morning. USAID has maintained a team of disaster experts with the capacity to respond if disaster strikes. These expert teams provide immediate assistance, including food and safe drinking water, needed to save lives in the aftermath of a disaster. The United States is evaluating the need for assistance based on requests and dynamic reporting. We are also united in support for the people of the Republic of Korea as they face devastating wildfires that have caused loss of life and destruction. We have not forgotten the Republic of Korea's unwavering support during the wildfires in Los Angeles and Hawaii. Just as they stood with us, we stand with them. As the Office of the Secretary also announced today, the Department of State and the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, have notified Congress on their intent to undertake a reorganization that would involve realigning certain USAID functions to the department by July 1st, 2025, and discontinuing the remaining USAID functions that do not align with administration priorities, I should say. In the words of Secretary Rubio in his statement, foreign assistance done right can advance our national interests, protect our borders, and strengthen our partnerships with key allies. Unfortunately, USAID strayed from its original mission long ago. As a result, the gains were too few and the costs were too high. Thanks to President Trump, this misguided and fiscally irresponsible era is now over. We are reorienting, I should say, our foreign assistance programs to align directly with what is best for the United States and our citizens. We are continuing essential life-saving programs and making strategic investments that strengthen our partners and our own country. This is yet another promise made and delivered to the American people. Finally, the United States announced important steps to disrupt the complex schemes Hezbollah uses to conceal its illicit behavior and acquire revenue to fund its malign activities. Today, we sanctioned 5 individuals and 3 entities for ties to U.S. designated Hezbollah. The United States is taking decisive action against anyone involved in facilitating Iran's oil sales at any stage of the supply chain. Today's designation supports the President's policy of maximum pressure on Iran and its terrorist proxies. And now, I'm open for questions. Now, there are all the hands. Dare I say, Matt Lee, he doesn't even, he's kind of got a pen, he's kind of raised the hand. But yes, go ahead, sir.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And, you know, I got you. I don't know how you got back at 4 o'clock. I got back at 3:30.
Well, there you go. We will not discuss transportation and domiciles, but go ahead, sir.
I guess the traffic was worse for you than it was for me. Anyway, I have two. They'll be both very brief. One, I think you can answer quite quickly because the Secretary addressed it on the plane last night on the way from Suriname to Florida, and that is about the Yale project on the Ukrainian children taken to Russia. What exactly has been restored, even if just temporarily? Can you give us a
Sure.
dollar amount? And then I've just got one more also.
Yes, and I'll repeat what the President said. There should be a transcript up of with these gaggles that happened in the back of the plane with our bullpen. And he was asked about, there was a very misleading tweet, I think, from a reporter saying that funding had been reversed and restored. The Secretary noted, no, it hasn't been. But I can tell you exactly what has occurred, and something, in fact, has. So, first of all, a couple of things here. And we've already talked about, of course, the data. That was a main concern. We know that the data was protected and available. But for those who are thinking that there was a reversal of the decision to terminate support for the Conflict Observatory, funding is being provided for a short period while the Conflict Observatory implementers ensure the proper transfer of the critical data on the Ukrainian children to the appropriate authorities. It is part of the standard closeout procedures for terminated programs. So this is not a reversal of funding. It's not a restoration. It is part of the closeout dynamic that we've realized in the process of closing it out about what needs to happen to finish that process. Also, as we learned about more specific requirements of the closeout, we provided then updated guidance to the implementer, so this is what has occurred. As part of the foreign assistance review directed by the Secretary consistent with the Executive Order 14169, the award supporting the Ukraine Conflict Observatory was paused effective January 25th. Following a review, the U.S. Department of State terminated the award on February 26th. So when we think about the nature of a very good example of what was fake news based essentially on something partially accurate, but this is the fact of the matter. There is no reversal of funding. It has not been renewed. This is a closeout procedure that required funding to move to make sure the data that was retained, that exists, is moved to the proper authorities.
So how much is it, do you know? For how long?
No, I can't speak to the amount of money. It's going to be an amount of money that facilitates the goal of that closeout.
Okay,
Matt,
and then well, hold on, wait.
I beg your pardon. Matt, I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just trying to get some more fidelity on the number of foreign students' visas that have been revoked. There's been some back and forth, and it's a little nebulous.
Sure.
If you have not the exact figure, I'm sure, because it's a fluid situation, but
it's one of my new favorite words, because that is somewhat correct. We know that, of course, there's some things I've said, I think, regularly on the issue of visas, is that we don't speak about specifics, right? We tend to also not provide statistics, and I think that's also important. So I'm not going to talk to you about numbers, because also it does continue to change. As we talk about numbers and everything else, we're looking at a framework where it gets us closer to the specifics for individuals, which we don't want to do. Of course, it's a big story. It's something also that's important when it comes to the larger story of the revocation of visas and why that's happening. But the Secretary also addressed this a couple of times on the trip. He was asked about certain numbers of visas that were revoked. He said he didn't know, but that we'll revoke the visas of whoever it is that fits within the category of what it is we're deciding is going to get your visa revoked, which is illegal activity, essentially. I do know that from our own conversations here, that, here we go, the department, I can say this specifically, revokes visas every day in order to secure America's borders and keep our communities safe, and will continue to do so. Because the process is ongoing, the number of revocations, as I've noted, is dynamic, and the department generally does not provide statistics on visa revocations, and generally we were not going to add anything at this time. But clearly, This is a process that we're committed to and is part of making America safe again. It's within our right, it's within the right of every sovereign nation to make a determination who will stay in this country, who will be allowed in this country. And the Secretary, of course, has been very clear on this. What we can also say is that we have zero tolerance for non-citizens who violate U.S. laws. Those who break the law, including students, may face visa refusal, visa revocation, and/or deportation. Also, all visa applicants, no matter the visa type and where they are located, are continuously vetted. So we are looking always at your status in this process. We also are looking at the security vetting. It runs from the time of each application through adjudication of the visa and afterwards during the validity period of every visa issued to ensure that the individual remains eligible to travel to and be in the United States. The Department of State will work closely, continues to work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, which enters into this process to administer and enforce U.S. visas and immigration laws. A lot of this may have been unknown to people who have visas because we haven't had to discuss it before, but I think that should answer your question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I want to follow up on the same topic. I want to go back to the detention of Turkish students.
All right, so what we're going to do is I do want to stay within a certain block so that we don't go back and forth because there's, again, a number of larger issues, and that includes this issue, the U.S. aid issue, the visa issues, the announcements made today. We have sanctions on Hezbollah, which are important to discuss. So, Andrea Mitchell. Yes, ma'am. We'll come back to you.
Okay,
we'll come back to you. Absolutely.
I wanted to ask you about U.S. aid,
Yes, ma'am.
disaster relief, and about the children.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. For the disaster relief, can you tell us how, when the disaster relief teams might be mobilized and ready, how soon that might take place? Have requests already come in, to your knowledge? And has the reorganization of U.S. aid affected our ability in these instances to assemble a team and mobilize them quickly?
Well, from conversations through the last, since early this morning, what I can tell you is that we wait for formal requests, so that has not, at least maybe in the last 5 minutes, but coming up here to the podium, we are waiting any formal requests. We are ready. Obviously, we are watching what is transpiring. It is, for all of us who watched September 11th unfold, there's video, I'm sure you've seen it, of a major skyscraper just, it gives all of us the chills. So we are, we've obviously telegraphing that from this podium, and we are ready. I can tell you that, again, through, as I've said before, regarding the nature of the reform and the reviews that have gone on, that we are ready to move now. So there has been no impact on our ability to perform those duties, those requests for aid, if and when they come in.
And to just follow up,
yes, ma'am,
on the children and the broader question about war crimes and investigations, which had been undertaken with coordination with the State Department, understanding that the data have been preserved.
Correct.
But does that mean, can we infer from that investigations will not be conducted by this government of war crimes going forward, in either the crime of kidnapping or the war crimes that were undertaken, Busha, Mariupol, all these other places?
I've cautioned always for us to not place a whole host of issues attached to something starting or stopping. And that, our work and our commitment to the world is on display every day through certainly Secretary Rubio's commitment, the nature of who he meets with, what he's done when it comes to summits, negotiations, bargaining, the issue of working for ceasefires. It has been a hallmark and remains a hallmark and will be, I have to say, a hallmark of this administration and of Secretary Rubio's tenure here. So it would be wrong to say that, in fact, that signals some kind of end to our work on these issues. In fact, manifesting through the conversation with President Trump and President Putin, it was a central part of that conversation that was discussed between those two men. And I think that shows you where it's placed now and where it will continue to be placed. Well, here's what I do know, which may speak to that a bit. is that the data is not being transferred to a storage facility. It's being transferred to the appropriate authorities. And I think that can tell us that the nature of the trajectory of this data, but also I can't speak to what then moves at that point once it's been transferred. I have a tiny feeling
No, I'm
that with
asking
all of
about
your investigations and questions, that we will continue to get the details of what happens next.
I'm talking about the crimes that are now underway today, tomorrow, next month. Is it anyone in this government investigating, anyone that, to your knowledge, at the State Department or connected to it, investigating crimes current and future since the data that has been?
Well, first, I'm not going to discuss the details of what the State Department is doing when it comes to its investigations, when it comes to contemplations or negotiations or diplomatic decision-making, whether on any level with any situation, any case that's involved. But what I can point to, I think it's safe to point to, is this nation's history of being involved in making sure that the right thing gets done. There are a number of other entities of which, of course, we are involved, including the United Nations, and, of course, other Europe, or the nations of the civilized world. So I would, same with whether it's aid, this argument that we are stopping our aid and we're out of of caring about providing foreign aid. Of course, that's not true. And because one grant dynamic has stopped in this country at one university, that is not the determiner of the nature of the work of the State Department of the United States. That's unfair, frankly, and moves people into this idea that everything is contained in one moment when there are thousands of moments and work going on around the world, but certainly including the nature of what the State Department's doing under the direction of Marco Rubio, when a commitment of the State Department to solve these problems, to stop carnage, to find justice. We want to be safe, secure, and prosperous for ourselves and for our neighbors. So that would not be an accurate conclusion based on this one particular grant. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Tammy. I just want to follow up on the earthquake response. The president said about an hour ago, we are going to be helping. We've already alerted the people. And you're saying, of course, you're waiting if and when those requests come in. So for the disaster response teams. So just wondering if you could clarify, is the State Department going to be doing anything else to help? Are there financial resources that are being devoted to these impacted countries? And then can you also just say what governments you are in contact with?
Well, again, the president, as you noted, had made some comments regarding that, which is terrific. Again, another indication that while the State Department does work on all these issues in general, of course, the president's going to make decisions about where we go and who we assist. When it comes to what we are waiting for here or looking for here, it could be different than what's happening at the White House. And, of course, I would refer you to the White House for further information in that regard. Very specific messaging, though, this morning from the State Department with what I was watching internally and to me is that we are ready and we stand ready and we will be ready when the requests emerge. And that's what I know, and that's what will happen. Yeah. All right. Yes.
Just staying on USAID or USAID.
Sure.
Today, USAID Foreign Service Officers received a reduction in force notice. This is hundreds of officers who are based abroad for USAID. Can you confirm that all Foreign Service Officers' positions will be terminated now and that they will all be coming home? And do you have or will there be transparency on how much it's going to cost to bring home hundreds of USAID Foreign Service Officers home, including their families, those, as you know, that have been based abroad and have their whole lives integrated into different countries abroad? Some of them have been working abroad for many, many years.
Yes. The Secretary has mentioned throughout this process, I've mentioned to you, that with any major change, there's going to be disruption. This particular review and project to assess the nature of waste and fraud and abuse and whether or not these programs and the grants align with America's priorities has been public news, worldwide news. We've discussed it openly. We've seen what's happened. And so it's something that I think most people, we've been waiting for this conclusion. It has arrived. I can't speak to the number of people who will not be a Foreign Service officer at this point. I can't say if it's going to be every single one. There'll be a point where I don't have to speak about fluid situations and things that are changing and moving every day. But of course, this is it's a restructuring essentially. And there's going to be, from one statement made, that there'll be from USAID, and a statement about the last mission, if you will, is that like any restructuring, there will inevitably be disruptions. From Secretary Rubio down, we are committed to ensuring that USAID personnel remain safe and that the agency's ongoing life-saving aid programs remain both intact and operational. And it's something that we're committed to. There are periods of time for blocks of individuals to come home and to be separated. But it's dynamic when you're looking at such a reorganization that's going to happen. We will, I'm sure, with this being a public story, have more information every day. And when that's possible, as I seek it out, I will bring it to you.
And
All
just
right.
one on the RAF,
Sure.
This note also said that employees will be separated from the Foreign Service effective from the 1st of July. Does that mean that they are not guaranteed an opportunity to apply for jobs?
Well, no, that's not true. There will be jobs that then can be applied for by those who have been separated. I can't tell you how many of those will exist, or even the structure of what that is, but there's been a very specific note that for the jobs that then are open, these individuals, or at least some of them, will be able to apply. So that will be part of it as well. Yes, Daphne.
Thank you. On what you said on the response to the earthquakes, I just wanted to clarify, is that the Disaster Assistance Response Team, the DART, that you're referring to?
DARTs. Yes, it's the DART system.
Okay, great. And how quickly would that team be able to get on site given the contract terminations and the cuts at USAID? Will they be able to respond as quickly as they've been able to in the past?
Well, from what I'm told is that what's been happening at USAID has not affected our ability to employ the DART system as we always have. When it comes to where they are and in that particular location, I can't give you a timeline, but clearly, as said repeatedly, we stand ready, and there's an understanding of what the situation is, and that certainly has not been impeded whatsoever. All right. Oh, yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I was also got home at 4 a.m.
Thank you very much.
A lot of the embassies that he's been visiting have also big USAID missions and local staff that are
Yes.
hired for them. So in this reduction, are all the local staff also being fired as you downsize?
Well,
USAID?
the messages I've seen and the guidance I've received is about Foreign Service officers. So I can't speak to where the local staff there fits within that framework. But so if they're not Foreign Service officers, but each mission is in a different dynamic. So I would. I can't speak to that at this point.
And one other question on another topic, Carrie Lake is talking about firing about almost 700 journalists at VOA. For those who are visa holders and from countries that where it might be dangerous for them to return,
Yes.
What's the State Department doing, like, to give them time to apply for asylum, or what kind of programs are in place to help people like in that?
Yes,
position?
I mean, this is a recurring question. It's an important one, and it's good for people in this situation and other situations. The visa dynamic for people involved in this situation is no different than everyone else who has a visa. That if you're here on a work visa and your job ends, some people have gotten another job on that framework and have then reapplied and have gotten a visa for that new job. If that's not going to happen, of course, there's like a 30-day period of time for you to take action about going home, going to your home country, or not. But then you would be here without a visa illegally. If you are from a country and you cannot return because of fear of what will occur to you if returning to that country, you can apply for asylum. This is true for everyone who holds a visa, who loses that visa, and believes that they would be in trouble going back to their home country. That is an option, and that is something that they can do as well if that's a case that they face. All right. Sir, right there in the glasses.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Sticking with USAID,
Thank you.
one of its crucial functions was getting humanitarian supplies into Gaza during the conflict there and during the ceasefire. Now, the last tranche of funding that it paid to the partners in the region was end of January. So there's a kind of block here. Will state be taking over this type of function come July the 1st? And what is going to happen for the funding for the partners applying that humanitarian relief in Gaza in the interim?
Well, we're at a state where Congress has just been notified that this transition is happening. I can't speak to the decisions that will be made once that decision occurs through USAID as it exists and how it moves into state. So that's the process that's happening right now. So I don't have something for you on that. But we also know that dynamic is very complicated, as we've talked about every day, importantly, and it remains complicated. And of course, aid can immediately move through that situation through all of our regional partners, people who are concerned. If Hamas were to release its hostages and lay down its arms, how many times does that need to be reminded? Because that's the solution. And when that does occur, as we saw with the first element of the ceasefire, is that the region cares about this, the nations in the region, the world cares, the United States of America cares, to where its leadership is involved in this as a main North Star of what needs to be solved. All right, yes, ma'am, in the blue. In the blue.
Thank you very much.
Can I follow up?
No, we're moving on. We'll see what we can do here.
Thank you. Going back to the detention of Turkish student Rümeysa Öztürk, because I want to get a clear understanding of why she was detained and on what grounds her visa was revoked. So Rümeysa's lawyer, family, and friends deny the claims made by the administration that she violated the U.S. law. Her lawyer states that Rümeysa has not been accused of committing any crime, and they say she was detained solely for writing an article criticizing Israel. What is your response to that? Was she detained just because she wrote an article expressing her views?
I will not, as many of you already know, I will not speak about something that's in the courts, that's being adjudicated, so that's not going to happen here. I can point to Secretary Rubio's remarks about this on the plane to the reporters as we were returning home last night, is that the DHS, which manages this framework, clearly felt that she had committed crimes that required her detention. And now that will be adjudicated in court, but it's a framework that we would not be commenting on in any regard, regardless of the situation or whom it happens to. As you've noted, it is playing out in court with representatives, and that's where it's going to be.
Is there any possibility that you might make this evidence about her public?
I am not here to comment on what's going to happen in a courtroom or the people who are involved in that court case. It's not my position. It certainly is beyond my purview, and we're going to leave it there. Yes, sir. In the middle.
Thank you, Tammy. Yesterday, Secretary Rubio spoke about his meeting with Turkish Foreign Minister and the theme of that meeting earlier this week. My question is that have they talked about the peace process between Turkish government and the Kurdish fighters in Turkey, and the peace process between Kurds and Turks? Is it something, the matter of your concern?
Here's what I think we know, and again, the Secretary spoke about this a little bit also on the plane. It was he enjoys speaking to the press, and that is helpful for us when it comes to transparency and the American people knowing what's going on. I, of course, and I know why you ask, and everyone wants to know, but I'm not in a position where I'm going to speak about the nature of a conversation between the Secretary of State of the United States and the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia or anyone else in a position in any country where there's discussions about any kind of dynamic involving governance and the choices that those governments make. What I can say, of course, as we know, is that Turkey is an ally, a member of NATO, and the conversations we have are often and deal with issues that are of importance to both countries. So I'm going to leave it there. So yes, sir, with the glasses in the back here.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Sergey Yumatov with TASS News Agency. So my question is on Russia and Ukraine. When do you expect the next round of consultations between the American and Russian delegations to occur?
Well, we know, of course, that we have our teams that have returned from the last Saudi Arabian technical framework of what they were working on there. The Secretary has noted in some of his comments that now we have to take a look at what's been accomplished and what we need to be doing, and we will decide at that point about how we proceed. All right? All right. Yes, sir.
Can I move to Lebanon?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Tammy. Ahmed Hazim, Al Jazeera. Today, there was some missiles fired in northern Israel from Lebanon. Israel retaliated with airstrikes and artillery in the south and even in the capital, Beirut. My question is that the ceasefire agreement, in it, there is a mechanism for reporting violation or alleged violation of the agreement itself, the ceasefire itself. This mechanism is led by the United States, will include France, UNIFIL, and both parties have to report any violations to the cease agreement. Was this mechanism implemented in this incident?
Well, I can say a few things about this, including Israel is defending its people and interests by responding to rocket attacks from terrorists in Lebanon. As part of the cessation of hostilities agreement, the government of Lebanon is responsible for disarming Hezbollah, and we expect the Lebanese armed forces to disarm these terrorists to prevent further hostilities. The reason that any attacks have happened is because terrorists launched rockets into Israel from Lebanon. That is a violation of the cessation of hostilities. It is a violation of the ceasefire when terrorist groups, when armed groups, shoot rockets into Israel. Whether it's Hezbollah or whether it's Palestinian groups like Hamas, it does not matter. Israel has to respond as the United States would have to respond, or any other country would have to respond in this kind of situation. We stand by Israel, of course, and it's a dynamic that also continues to unfold, but I think it's pretty clear that this is the responsibility of the Lebanese armed forces to disarm the terrorists who are preventing, in order for us to prevent further hostilities. Yes, sir, in the middle.
Thank you very much. Several human rights organizations and the media reported that many civilian activities have been arrested in Iranian Kurdistan for participating in Nowruz celebrations. Have you received any reports on this matter, and how would you to describe human rights record in Iran?
Yes, yes, we are aware of those reports, that the Iranian regime has been arresting Iranian Kurds for participating in those celebrations. The regime is one of the world's worst violators of human rights, oppressing the Iranian people to maintain its grip on power and curtailing their exercise of fundamental freedoms. In Iran, the freedom of expression, peaceful assembly, and religion are completely ignored. The regime unjustly executes more people than any other country, persecutes members of religious and ethnic minority groups, and uses tactics like arbitrary arrest and torture and other violations to intimidate political opponents and squash dissent. We will continue to support and defend the human rights of the people of Iran against the regime's continued human rights abuses and authoritarian repression. All right. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Tammy. Very quick question. Axios reported yesterday that a new U.S. proposal was submitted to reignite the ceasefire talks and so on. Can you share with us anything about the status of this peace proposal that was submitted by the United States? Is it gaining traction? What is next?
Yes, I can't speak to that today, but we are, again, next week returning we're going to have a Monday briefing, and I have a feeling you might have another question, and I will be answering your question tomorrow, but we'll do that. Yes, Daphne.
Can I follow up on...
No, we're going to Daphne here, but yes, thank you.
Just on the Panama Canal, today China's...
The Panama Canal, all right.
Sorry.
Yes. No, it's all right. No, it's okay. We're here. We're good.
Okay. Today, China's market regulator said it will carry out an antitrust review on the Hong Kong's CK Hutchinson's proposed sale of 2 Panama ports to BlackRock to, as Beijing said, protect fair competition and safeguard public interests. What is the U.S. response to that move by Beijing, and what's your message to Panama, which has an audit pending over the company's concessions to operate those ports?
All righty. So we are aware of the comments made by China. It's also no surprise that the CCP is upset at this acquisition, which will reduce their control over the Panama Canal area. We are also glad to see U.S. investors acquire a controlling stake in the Panama Ports Company, which owns and operates the ports of Balboa and Cristobal at either end of the Panama Canal. So we would refer you to BlackRock and CK Hutchison for more information about the agreement itself. And we refer you to the government of Panama regarding its role in ensuring that the sale complies with Panamanian laws and regulations. So yes, we're aware, and it's not a surprise, certainly. All right, yes, pink jacket.
Thank you. Back to Turkey. Is there a confirmed date for President Erdogan's visit to the White House in April out of Foreign Minister Fidan's meeting with Secretary Rubio on Tuesday?
Not that I'm aware of, but again, the White House may have more information on that for you.
They are not very responsive.
In the white shirt here. You just sat down, sir. One moment, please. In the white shirt, please.
Thank you very much. On Georgia.
I'm sorry.
On Georgia, if I may.
Okay, sure.
Thank you very much. Have you had any communication with the ruling party in Georgia? And if so, could you share what type of communication exists between you now? You know that the situation in Georgia is very difficult. The Georgian people and the international community do not recognize the election results. Peaceful protesters have been arrested, as well as an independent journalist who's currently in jail. Okay. So, given these circumstances, what is your perspective on the situation in Georgia?
I do want to answer that, and as a result, we're going to take that back, and we will have an answer for you. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, Tim. I'm sorry to jump to another region, but I wanted to ask.
It's everywhere. There's news everywhere.
South Sudan.
Sure.
Do you have the State Department have any comment on the situation there, which is on the brink of plunging back into the civil war? The vice president was put under house arrest, and the situation is pretty dire. So I was wondering if the U.S. State Department has any comment on that. Well,
of course, there's been news on this, the dire situation, I think, throughout the area. And then whether it's North Darfur, et cetera. So we are concerned about a number of issues that are unfolding. And that, too, I'm going to have to get some updated information on, because what I'm seeing here is I'd like something new, some updates there. So we'll have that. We'll bring that back for you for sure. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Jahan Saibali from ARY News, Pakistan.
Okay.
For the last few months, we have seen a rise in terrorist activities in Pakistan. Hundreds of civilians and security officials lost their lives. And Pakistan is a partner country, recently handed over the most wanted terrorists to U.S. authorities. And these all terrorist networks are based in Afghanistan, TTP, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and Pakistan is kind of war against terrorism. So how you guys see this kind of situation, like all those terrorist networks established and working under the umbrella of Taliban?
Well, it's a dynamic where we're aware of certain problems, human rights issues, et cetera. But again, we seem to be in a series here of things that I want to take back on this. So I'm going to take that back. If you don't mind, we're going to go on. Okay, and what I do want to discuss here, sir, and if someone has, I want to discuss the Hezbollah sanctions that we have going on as well. I know that many of you might be interested in that as well. But let's go on. I'm not going to start to try to direct what we're saying here. Let's go on. Okay. Let's go on here. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to ask about the Hezbollah. You can talk a little bit about the sanctions and also the Lebanese foreign minister with the Syrian one signed an agreement for the border in Syria between Syria and Lebanon. If you have also something on that.
Yes, yes, we do. So first, let's start here with Hezbollah. The United States is designating 5 individuals and 3 entities pursuant to Executive Order 13224 as amended for ties to U.S. designated Hezbollah or individuals designated through this action. The action advances President Trump's maximum pressure policy on Iran and its proxies. We will continue to disrupt the complex schemes Hezbollah uses to conceal its illicit behavior and acquire revenue to fund its malign activities. And we will, the United States, will take decisive action against anyone involved in facilitating Iran's oil sales at any stage of the supply chain. We are exerting maximum pressure on Iran and its terrorist proxies under the President's maximum pressure policy to disrupt Iran's destabilizing activities. The Department of Treasury is designating, again, 5 individuals, 3 entities for supporting a sanctions evasion network affiliated with Hezbollah's finance team. This action is part of the United States' effort to deny Hezbollah access to revenue and to cut off the terrorist group's access to the international financial system. Today's designations support the whole-of-government policy of maximum pressure on Iran and its terrorist proxies, such as Hezbollah, as detailed in the National Security Presidential Memorandum 2 of February 4th. We will, the United States, use all of its tools to disrupt activities of individuals and companies supporting Hezbollah. The United States is committed to working with partners to disrupt terrorism and terrorist financing worldwide. All right. Yes, sir. And this will be it. This will be the last. So make it good.
I'm going to go back to the very first question.
All right, sure. Make a good circle.
The issue of Ukrainian children. The president was asked about Ukraine just a couple of hours ago, and he did highlight the issue of Ukrainian children.
He did.
It looks like this is something he cares about. To deliver on the president's stated goal, even if this funding will run out of this very particular program, can you assure us that you will be seeking, supporting alternative programs, at least, to deliver on that?
Well, I think the biggest, most amazing program can be the most powerful man in the world caring about the resolution of the issue. That is something that nothing can match. And that's what we have now. And you are correct. I think it's clear for anyone who listens to President Trump that he is a serious person, addresses issues that matter to him directly, that he knows will make an impact on the quality of people's lives. That is the Trump effect. And the fact that he is successful in the choices he makes and that he is relentless in making them work has an impact on the resolution of those issues. As far as what mechanisms he will use, I don't know. He's the President of the United States. He's the best deal maker in the world. And those children matter to him. And it matters that that issue is resolved like it does to every decent human being on this planet. President Trump represents the notion of that outrage and the desire to solve the problem in the process of getting to the end of this horrible carnage that has gone on. So, yes, I can't tell you what mechanism he would choose. We do know that he's chosen a Secretary of State who feels as passionately about the resolution of these issues as he does. We are going to continue to see that unfolding, and it is, while horrible issues we're facing, it is an exciting time because we have leadership that are tired of the status quo, want results, care about people, and are going to do what it takes to get results. And that's what I have for you today. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you also on Monday. We'll see you on Monday. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.